So my name is Bruce Klingett. I am Associate Program Manager at JAKALA and focused on higher ed, nonprofit, and sports entertainment. I don't know why I left sports entertainment off this slide, but that's my primary focus is sports entertainment, but I also do a lot of the program work across our nonprofit and higher ed vertical as well. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk a little bit about AI for project managers and why I think AI's true calling in our field is tooling and not taking care of the minutia that a lot of people think it is. So we'll talk about a little bit about like where I think it fits and where it doesn't. We'll talk about a problem and a solution that we specifically encountered and drove through here at JAKALA, and then at the end I'll go over some lessons learned, and we'll have a little bit of a deeper conversation about AI, though we won't go in too depth. It's not super technical here. Here's my big thing about AI. AI is not about doing less. It is about doing better. It's not about how can I not respond to emails. It's not about how can I make my calendar better managed. It's about how can I free up space in the minutia tasks that I do and actually spend more time doing the things that I'm getting paid for. Because project managers, program managers, developers, doesn't matter who it is on your team, the things you're paying them to do are not answering emails and responding to calendar invites or sending calendar invites. They're being paid to be critical thinkers, to build things, to create things, to do cool things. And I believe that the best way that we can do that across projects is to create tooling. The example I'm going to talk about today is an example that we run across at JAKALA, but it's only one example of something we're doing. What I'm going to talk about is a tool that we built to make our project managers' lives easier, but we're also using AI across our projects to create tooling for other things. And I'll give another example before we kind of dive into the one I want to talk about. But we have a partner who was having some major challenges with Redis caching, and so our teams work together not to build a tool to solve, or not to ask AI to solve the problem of Redis caching, but to give us visibility into what was happening in the Redis server, so that we could actually solve the problem, so we could see what was really going on. So another example of how tooling, I think, kind of helps the whole project team when you're dealing with major problems. And what AI allows us to do is to create that tooling from scratch, very bespoke to the need that we have, and very quickly as well. So let's talk a little bit about the problem. The problem that we faced at JAKALA was that we were using relatively antiquated tooling that we had built very custom in spreadsheets. And I know some places I've worked in and been around in the past have used giant Power BI, complicated workflows and things like that to do this. We were using this essentially what was created in a Google spreadsheet, and then transitioned over to Microsoft when JAKALA made the transition from Google to Microsoft, to track all of our resourcing, all of our budgets, all of our project progress across projects. None of these spreadsheets really connected to each other. They never showed any really good data. They just were there. So as we evolved, these workbooks we called them workbooks, they got more and more complicated. And you can see in here, I'll kind of give you a brief idea of what this picture is showing. On the right, I know it's a very small picture, probably on your screen, but on the right, on the left, it's a list of all the people that are on the project and their role, and then on the right is a giant table of every week in the project and the number of hours. What you're seeing on the top is the number of hours that they're allocated. What you're seeing on the bottom is the number of hours that they worked. So that's why those tables have value. Like some have values that look like they're in the past, some have values that look like they're in the future. This table populated based on essentially a CSV export that we did from our resourcing tooling that one person was required to manually upload into another Google spreadsheet that somebody then connected to all these spreadsheets so that it would pull our resourcing data. If you accidentally copied and pasted wrong, or you accidentally entered the wrong value in the wrong place, the whole workbook broke, and there were about 3 of us who were capable of fixing it, and we would spend hours upon hours a week just fixing these workbooks. So while we had really good adoption of these, it took us forever to get that adoption, and then the ability to upkeep it at scale was just not there. There were a handful of us who were spending way more time updating these workbooks for people than actually managing projects that we were supposed to be on. So it didn't have guardrails, the data was always wrong, and as you can kind of see in this next slide, not only were we spending all this time to upkeep them, but even the data that we could get, this is all automatic populated data about like budget burn and like weekly forecast versus usage and stuff like that, but you can see it's not displayed in a way that's easy to understand or follow. So because our tools were hard to read, leaders weren't reading them. Leaders were escalating problems that could be explained very easily with the data that project managers had, and PMs were then spending time kind of de-escalating problems that weren't really problems. So I set out at the end of last year and said, I want to try to use AI to build cool things. And so this was the project that I took on. So we had a problem, now we had to have a plan. And so I set out at the beginning of December to kind of start thinking about how I wanted to do this. And then as the holiday time came around and I got a little bit more time in my schedule, I sat down and started to develop this plan that I used to implement this tool to replace all these antiquated workbooks. I broke it into essentially 5 stages, and while I didn't know what tools I was going to use in every stage of the 5 stages, I put down at the bottom what tools I'm using in those different stages as we go along. So the first stage was planning, and in planning I ended up using ChatGPT and a little bit of Copilot. Copilot because it was connected to all of our document base, so I could very easily ask Copilot questions about how data was being used or differences across many different workbooks, because there were kind of some custom evolutions of workbooks that were out there. So I was able to ask it and get information, and then I was able to feed that into ChatGPT and then write a functional specification. I wrote that entire functional specification in ChatGPT. I did not write a single word of it. I only prompted to make changes as I read through it, recognized that there was challenge or that it wasn't aligned with what I was trying to do, prompted to rewrite it, had ChatGPT take care of that entire project plan essentially, curate it into a single document that I was then able to take into Confluence and build in a space that I could share with the rest of the team. So not only was ChatGPT curating that plan, it created me pastable links or pastable text that I could dump right into Confluence, and then I could share that plan with other people across our team. Found that other people across our team just got confused by the project spec and they didn't really want to dig into it, or they didn't have time to dig into it. So I actually went back to Copilot and ChatGPT and asked it the questions that I was trying to get answers from our team. So I actually got really good feedback by doing that. The thing I've learned from that is question AI. Like, have AI question you and question AI the whole time. Honestly, ChatGPT gave me really good stuff, and in the end, I forced, and I use that word very, very deliberately, I forced ChatGPT to give me a single prompt to try to build the app. What could go wrong, right? Like a single prompt, we're going to build an entire app to replace almost all of our project management functionality in a single prompt. Foreshadowing, not a great decision, but I learned something there, and I learned a little bit about how prompt engineering was kind of important. The next phase we went into was a build phase. Cursor was the tool of my choice, but I had never used it before. I had coworkers that had used it. We had adopted it across our development teams, but our project management teams did not have access to it, so I had never really seen it. It was a little bit scary. Cursor is a little bit scary if you're not a developer, because it kind of still has that IDE flavor to it. It has the, the file structure on the left and, command line ability in it. And I chose to dive in and use it exactly like my counterparts on the dev side were using it. And I forced myself to kind of relearn the command line, which I hadn't worked on in probably a decade, and really get comfortable with Git and, running database queries and things like that. This is something that will come out when we talk about our learnings, the things we learned out of this. I learned a ton, and we're going to talk about how that impacted that. Cursor was really great. It did a really good job. The thing I learned out of it was that I had to think about context differently, because when you're chatting into ChatGPT and you're asking it, hey, help me build this project plan, you're really just having this conversation back and forth. And the context you feed it is the information about your project. In Cursor, the context you're feeding it is not just the information about your project, but also the information about the code that Cursor has already written. So something I learned later on down the road and that I used Claude for, along with a combination of tools in the command line like repo mix, was I was able to let Claude help plan my steps, have Claude develop a repo mix command that would essentially summarize the code that was already in place, provide that back to Cursor, and then I was able to gobble up far less context in Cursor by being more efficient. Better prompt engineering made my life go so much better once I dug into this. Cursor was able to get me kind of a limited piece of functionality, of really good proof of concept, but in the end, the proof of concept was good enough that people actually adopted it. And while I did a limited rollout with just a handful of people, it was me and the person who developed the initial workbook that we were using, I quickly was able to put this in front of the project managers that worked underneath me, and suddenly all of my projects had it, and then suddenly all the projects across our vertical had it, and then the next thing I realized, it was half the company that was using this tool that I had built in essentially 14 days, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. So things I learned during that rollout was the more users I brought on, the more bugs I got. This actually stopped eventually. I had a ton of bugs at first, and as I went further on, I got less and less bugs. Cursor drove fixing those, so it really wasn't a problem. And then Rovo, which is Atlassian's AI tool, kind of came into play. We didn't have Rovo in our Atlassian instance in December when I started planning, but by the time I got to February and March, Rovo had come around, and I was able to feed Rovo some of my documentation, and Rovo was able to kind of continually update my documentation in Confluence, so that as we onboarded new people, if they got stuck in the complexity, they could always go back to Confluence and kind of get an answer of what happened. Something else I learned from the limited rollout is if you're vibe coding a tool, vibe code documentation for the tool as well. So I built into my Cursor workflow, every time I created a feature, update my documentation, literally a command in the Cursor file that tells it to update my technical documentation, my user documentation, and also my change log. So every time I build a feature, all I have to do is say Cursor update my documentation. Cursor updates all that documentation. And then when I get ready for a release, I can be like, hey, prep me for a release. It goes back and reviews all that documentation, organizes it so that it's ready for a release, and then the change log has all the information to the users about what I'm releasing. So things I learned through that limited rollout was in order to operate at scale, I had to operate more like the teams that I manage and less like a single person running an app. I had to expect from me the same thing I expect from my developers when they're working on large enterprise projects. Expansion came next. At this point, we were still uploading manual CSV files from our resourcing tool. So as we moved out of proof of concept, I was able to get leadership buy-in to connect the tool directly to our resourcing tool, which we use Float, if anybody wonders. So I was able to get an API key to Float and connect it to Float. Expansion was harder than I thought. Connecting to Float was super easy. Cursor did a great job at that. What Cursor didn't do a really good job was telling me that the data model in the Float CSV file and the data model in the API were much more different than I thought they were. So while I thought they were a little bit closer, even after reviewing the documentation, I found some major gaps into how just the data model, how it lays out data across the weeks and months. An example of that is in the CSV file, it looks at it as a week. It says, hey, this person has 5 hours this week, 5 hours this week, 5 hours that week. In the API, it looks at it as a start date and an end date, and you have to extrapolate how many hours per day it is. Well, I couldn't figure out why everybody had essentially 2 days less allocation than they were supposed to, and the reason was because since I didn't tell Cursor our work week was Monday through Friday, and the API doesn't have any way to tell Cursor that, when it built the app, it said, oh, well, this is a weekly allocation of 10 hours, but I've got to divide it over 7 days, when really we're dividing it over 5 days because we only have a 5-day work week. So that brought in a lot of cool things. We also got PTO access, cool tools that I don't think we ever thought we needed, but in hindsight, our PMs are using more and more now. And that kind of got us to that 1.0 spot. And at 1.0, we decided we were going to roll this out across all of North America. And just earlier this week, we presented this to the kind of last group of leadership, vertical leadership, and we're starting the rollout of the application across their people as well. So our goal is to essentially be fully adopted by the time we get to June of this year. I set the very aggressive goal at the beginning of June. I still think we're capable of hitting that. And if you think about that, that means February to June, we implemented what is, for all intents and purposes, kind of an enterprise level tooling for all of our project managers. And I was not a full-time developer on this at all. So I probably spent 4 to 6 hours a week from February till now on it. And in December, I ended up having to take a break because I got busy on projects and couldn't work in January on this at all. So really, this project, February to April, now into May, June, will be a complete rollout in really less than 5 months or so. And that's our adoption plan. My plan is to use Rovo to continue to update our documentation, and I'm using Rovo to kind of track adoption across the company. So as we add projects into the tool, I have a master list of all the projects that we're operating as a company, and then I'm able to track what I have left to adopt. And Rovo helped me build all those tables. I didn't think I was going to need Rovo, but I used it and it was kind of cool. So if you're using Atlassian tools and you haven't played with it, it's interesting and you should spend some time on it. So let's talk a little bit about the application. We'll kind of dive right in here. I want to show you screenshots of this. I wish I could live demo it to you really, but I could not find a way to kind of whitelist the data in it to a point where it made it to where we weren't sharing sensitive data. So screenshots is kind of what you get. And the thing you'll notice about this first piece is that the key element we wanted was resource planning. We wanted project managers to be able to resource plan, to adjust, to experiment, and do all that in a non-destructive manner. They can see real-time PTO and holiday data, which to us is a giant challenge because we have employees in, I can think on projects that I'm working on right now, I have employees in 7 countries. Each of the 7 countries celebrates holidays differently. Even when they're neighbors, they celebrate holidays differently. Even our neighbors in Canada celebrate holidays differently. So being able to see really quickly when holiday was impacting and when PTO was impacting my projects was a huge, huge win. They can also see these resource plan totals add up in their budget projections. So I'll show you a budget screen here in a moment, but all of this resource planning rolls into those budget projections. So as they're kind of playing around with ideas, they can literally go to the budget tab and see how those ideas impacted the budget projection at the end of the project. How many hours do you think you're going to have left? How much money do you think you're going to have left? Any of that kind of good stuff. It's non-destructive, meaning they can refresh this back to the actual world of resourcing with one click of a button. So they can click one button, it brings the actual resource plan that's in the system that everybody's living by, and brings it right back into their plan, so they can make whatever edits they want. You can see some indicators on here. I'll just kind of go through them, right? The pills at the top are blue, holiday. The orange pill is PTO along the top there. The blue line on top of somebody's cell means that they have PTO or they have a holiday that week. And then there's a very hard to see orange outline. You can see it on almost the second to last row. You can kind of see it. There's an orange outline that indicates somebody has PTO. These red boxes indicate that the plan does not match what's in float, so what the employee is seeing. So these three examples are really good examples where somebody put in PTO and the PM never went back and updated the project plan to support that PTO. So the next time they go in, which is usually Monday or Tuesday, they will see that they need to kind of reevaluate what their plan is for these people because they have PTO in and they're not available anymore. So that's resourcing. We also track budget burn in this sheet, just like we did on the workbook. We intentionally did not connect our time tracking tool to this project because we want our PMs to have the physical impact of coming in here, putting their time in every week. We feel that those 10 numbers to enter every week for a project are valuable, and what we want to do in the future is potentially create some accountability where they can double check their work, but we want this process to be manually. PMs do all their budget reconciliation in this tool. The idea is that this tool then becomes our reporting tool that even the company uses. If I have my way, we're using less and less of those other tools like Float and our time tracking tool, and we're living more and more out of here. But even though we've created automation, we think that accountability is important. An interesting problem we had to solve here, or we were able to solve here that we couldn't solve in the spreadsheets, was we track our time by week. Our time tracking tool tracks our time by week over month. So if a week existed that was in 2 months, like the week we're in right now, where today's the last day of April and tomorrow's the first day of May, the week is split and we have to combine all those numbers together, which means our old tool could not get actual data at the monthly level. It had no way to do it. We were able to create, and it's again a little hard to see. I know I've got it's a screenshot, right? But these months or these weeks that look different to you, these actually expand, and a PM can add the first half of the week and the second half of the week. There's also guardrails in here. If a PM doesn't update them, it will indicate to them that they're not updated and that they're not up to date and they're not ready to go. We also have a budget table in our tool as well. It shows all of the burn information. It shows projected burn, which is the actuals remaining in the forecast. It shows all the buffers. It shows your resource usage. We call this revenue recovery. It's kind of an internal term, but to a PM, this is really resource efficiency. It's, hey, I'm resourcing 10 hours and I'm using 8. My resource efficiency is 80%. We were having some problems with our PMs and resource efficiency last year. I noticed when we put this tool in front of them and allowed them to really visualize what was going on across their resourcing, not only did we see that problem go away, but we saw their resource usage go up significantly. So our goal I set across my program was 85%. I found that my PMs are all now hovering in the 95%, where they were hovering in the 75 to 80% before. So, I wouldn't call that a dedicated metric, but it's definitely something that we've noticed. We also have the ability to create granular rate cards, right, as the project rates change because people cost more or less. All those rates are kind of calculated individually across our budget. We do have some basic timeline functions and some basic milestone functions that exist. It's very high level. It serves as a stopgap. Anybody who's used timelining in Confluence, you'll notice this looks very similar. I wrote my prompt using the user functionality in Confluence because I felt like it was a relatively easy thing to implement. So it operates the same way. It's just a click of a button to add a bar, change how long the bar is type thing. I do want to update this. I want to change this and make it more hands-on, more click, drag, pull, move things around, stuff like that. It's definitely in the list of things to do. We also have we also have other tools that we could potentially integrate in here that we'll talk about in a moment, that could make this better. The goal here was just to get us to where we could get adoption, and this got us adoption. Our PMs were able to use this tool and replace another tool that they were using, and that's kind of what I was after. Second to last thing that we did in the app was all of our status reporting. If any of you have worked with JAKALA in the past, you'll recognize this status report. The status report has a timeline in it, it has the budget, it has risks and stuff like that. PMs were spending like 20 to 30 minutes a week doing status reports for every project, kind of manually formatting timelines, validating, populating them. And then their leadership was spending sometimes that same amount of time going back and forth with them, because we would find small budget errors or something, because everything was being manually populated. This automatically populates almost everything you see here and reduced our kind of status report creation time from 20 to 30 minutes to like 2 to 3 minutes. So huge increases in productivity off of this. That less leadership overhead, that less project overhead just means that that's time that our clients can spend, or our project managers can spend working with our clients directly, or doing tasks that are very specific to them and aren't just bookkeeping. We also built dashboarding. Every user has dashboarding scoped to their projects. So if you're an account director, all the projects that you're an account director on show up in your dashboard. If you're a program manager, all the projects that you're a program manager on show up in your dashboard. If you're a PM, it's just the projects that show up in your PM. This allows us to tell PMs and account managers and program managers what's the size of the book of business that they're managing, which I think is a really important metric as we talk about things we've accomplished. Being able to say, hey, I'm managing $10,000 or $10 million worth of business, or I'm managing $5 million worth of business is important to project managers. It's something, if you've ever applied for a project management job, people ask, like, what's the size of the portfolio you've managed? So not only are we able to show that, but we're able to show all this health data. All the dots that you see on the right-hand side show whether or not the actuals are updated, whether or not a status report has been incomplete, or whether a status report is not green. Like if the last status report is a yellow or red rag color, then it will indicate on here and be a very quick notice that, hey, you should pay attention to this. This is something to notice, something to look at. We're also showing all those revenue recovery numbers. We're also showing PTO on these dashboards. We're showing project burn, budget burn. We're showing buffer. We're showing all that stuff kind of in one dashboard for the project teams as a whole to see. So what are the benefits? The real question is, how do we benefit from this? I've talked about it a little bit. We don't have exact numbers on this because we're still kind of in a rollout. But the big benefits is, number one, visibility. Our leadership has the ability to see things in a really easy and healthy manner. They don't have to escalate problems that aren't really problems. And our project managers now have really good visibility into what others are doing in their projects as well. So one of the things that I kind of championed in this was having it open to all of our project managers. If you want to look at another project, you can just go look at another project. You want to see, am I the only one that is having a problem with this buffer? Like, what is everybody else keeping their buffer at? How do I align with what others are doing? We're also kind of sparking innovation because teams are considering the type of work that I just did in their projects now. Some of them didn't think that that was a possibility. They didn't think that was a thing. So they're asking their developers more pointed questions about their use of AI. And then we're just evolving our processes. We're learning things that we don't actually need, that we thought we needed, that we thought we were using, but come to find out we were just using because we thought everybody else thought it was important. And then our business impact has been spectacular. First of all, we've made almost no changes to critical business functions. Actually, we've made no changes to critical business functions. We've evolved the app around things that have to work for us. And I've not had a single slow adopter. As a matter of fact, I onboarded every single project manager by walking them through adding a single project for them, and I even backfilled all the data into that project because it was historical. Um, and I had to do a lot of manual time to do that. And what I would find is even though I offered, hey, I can set up these other projects for you, by the time we got in the next week it started, most of these PMs had already added all their projects and were already up and running and using it. So we didn't have anybody that was like, oh yeah, I'll look at this sometime and maybe come back to it. So what's next for Project Workbench? We're rolling out company-wide. That's the big thing. I would like to do a Slack integration, single-click resourcing requests, right? Project manager updates their plan, they get it to where they want it, they want that request to go in. That request has to be done by a program manager or an account director. So they can make that request, it gets routed to a Slack channel just like we do now, but instead of typing out a big long message, we can even maybe have AI generate a summary of what the changes are, so that the person doing it knows. Also, creating more reminders and guardrails with Slack is another thing that I want to do. Guardrails about, hey, your actuals aren't in, so just sending you a message on Slack saying, hey, you're falling behind on your actuals, let's go in and update them today. Or, hey, your buffer's getting low, just here's a warning in case you didn't miss it. Trying to put things more in front of our project managers, more likely to find problems before they actually become problems. The next thing we want to do is leadership dashboarding. We're going to do this in process because I think one of the things we've learned here is that what is important to leadership often isn't the same thing that's important to the projects. So as a team, we want to get all of our leadership together in a room, and maybe even some of our solutions consultants, and bring them in and kind of solution, just like we would with a client, what we want to see from a leadership point of view. What is the data that we want to see? Once we do that and we kind of determine what that is, we can see if it fits within that current data model, or we can make updates to the data model. We can kind of evolve around that as well. And then, I mean, evolution, I have an idea about it, evolving this to include smart sheets, where a PM could link a smart sheet and it would take their Gantt chart or their project plan that they built in a smart sheet and overlay resourcing data on top of it, so they can see, hey, you're expecting a big design push during this time, but you don't have resourcing to support that design push. Things like that. And then AI integration for project health. I think I've seen another company kind of do something like this, and I don't know that it's working really well for them or that they're getting value out of it, but I would like to kind of play with it and try with it. Kind of running out of time here, and I want to give time for questions if there are any, but here's my lessons learned. First thing I learned is I learned a ton about Next.js. I wrote this entire app, or Cursor wrote this entire app on Next.js. We launched it on Vercel. I know now a ton more about how Vercel works. I know a ton more about how Next.js works, and that's good for me because I have a couple projects that are running on Vercel and Next.js. And so now I know more about that ecosystem than I did before, and that is a huge benefit for me. I also got comfortable things I've never been comfortable with. I got more comfortable with database architecture, management, running queries in a database, just all things that I didn't have a very strong hand on. And while I don't think I have a super strong hand on right now, I'm way better than I was at the time. I also understand the challenges that my team always came back with me on and said, hey, we don't have enough information to build this thing. I totally understand what they mean now. Like, not that I didn't understand it before, but I've now felt that. I don't have enough information to solve this problem. I also learned that tooling matters a ton. Not just the tools we create, but the tools that we use. Just because it's free does not mean that it's the best thing. We often find people being forced into using tools like Copilot and things that are just bundled into what they're using. And those tools are good for things, but not good for everything. And so make sure you give your teams freedom. Don't force them to use Copilot and Gemini just because they're bundled for you. Encourage them to figure out what those limitations are and then come back to you with why those are limiting and what they need to move forward. Also, model matters. Even in the same tool set like Cursor, you can visibly see how the models operate differently. You can check all kinds of models in Cursor. You can use pretty much all the major models. Cursor also allows you to run the same prompt on multiple models. Really good experiment if you're messing around with this stuff. Try that. run the same prompt on multiple models, and see how it comes out with kind of a different response. Um, and then the biggest thing I learned is that context matters. Context is essentially the information you're giving AI to solve your problem or to answer your question. When we're doing like chat-based AI, where it's just responding with text. Often you're just giving it text, right? So I'm giving it a project plan. I'm saying, hey, help me resource around this or whatever. That's the context you give it. When when you're dealing in code, you also have to worry not just about the context of solving the problem, but the context of the code that it's wrapped around. So that's where using repo mix came in really handy, being able to repo mix parts of it so that I wasn't adding the entire code base into context, and also so that I wasn't forcing Cursor to search my code base to find the things that it needed to find. Um, this made a huge difference on how much money I was spending on tokens. So the lower your context, the better your token usage is going to be. And the more tokens you use, the quicker you burn through your limits. And that's kind of what I found. What I found in all this is that you really have to frame the context and the prompt correctly. And when you do that, you will use far less tokens. And even now, 5 or 6 months down the road, I find myself making mistakes and finding that I burnt through 20% of my usage in Cursor on just a handful of prompts because I didn't give it good information, and now I'm kind of stifled for the rest of the month. So those are our learnings, and then just to kind of where to start. This is just my suggestion. Start small, find a problem, and solve just the piece of that problem, and then expand from that. So find your problem. How is your business unit being challenged? Solution that problem. Like find a way to solve the problem before you try to build the tool. Don't limit the tools and make AI ask you questions. The interviewing idea of AI is pretty resound right now. Like I think it is super important to let AI ask you questions and then question its responses to you. So don't let it ask you questions, but question the way it interprets what you ask. And then build with intention. Don't get distracted. I get distracted. My ADD kicks in with this stuff a lot, and I find myself building things that I don't need to build, or I don't need to build right now. And so find a problem, solve it, and don't go farther until that one problem is solved. You will find yourself much more clean and much more concise in the end by doing that. And that's all I have. And I think that leaves us like 7 minutes for questions, which is less than I was hoping for, but I will I will take what I'm able to get there. Any questions?
Question. Hi, Bruce. Thank you so much for your presentation. Yeah, I was wondering, so I was curious, I was about to ask about the tech stack. You said Next.js and Vercel via Cursor. What database did you use?
I used Neon as a database. I was actually going to use Supabase first, um, and I chose Neon actually off of AI's recommendation. Cursor's recommendation was Neon. I picked it. It has a really good integration with Vercel, and that's kind of why I went down that way. I wanted to use Supabase because Supabase has a little bit more fleshed out auth built into it, and I think that's a really nice benefit. Neon has auth; it's not quite as fleshed out, and so it's kind of caused me as I start to make this work more as an enterprise tool. It's caused me to have to look at other tools like Clerk to handle my auth.
Oh, okay, got it. And just two more questions quick. Reliability, I assume you don't want to be a system admin, so how has that worked out with any bugs, issues? Do you like there's tickets for the tool? Is it you've trained other people? I'm just kind of
Yeah,
wondering.
so far it's me, but you're right. I don't want to be a sysadmin on this, and this needs to have enough legs that if I were to win the lottery tomorrow and not come back to work, that we could maintain it. So there are a couple people who I think are strong enough in this that if something were to happen to me tomorrow, they'd be able to pick up and take it on. My goal in the end is to maybe have a small side project team that handles bugs that is not just me. I would actually love for that to be our PMs if I was saying this correctly. If I had to choose, I would like to make it our PMs that manage this, and and have them solve the bugs. So maybe a team leader who's kind of managing the work that they're doing, but having PMs actually use Cursor and continue to evolve the application. But right now it's me, and I'm kind of managing it poorly. But I'm able to iterate pretty quickly, and I can spend an hour or two and solve a pretty huge amount of bugs just using Cursor.
Okay, got it. And just the last question, quick. So the way the data model works in terms of your app is that so it's running on Vercel, and that's within your company's VPN and such, I assume. And then your PMs enter data into that, and then it goes through and does the pulling of data from your EI stuff. Is that kind of roughly the data model?
Uh, that is roughly the idea. It is on a Vercel account that's owned by the company. Well, it's under my company email address, but I mean the company would have access to it at any point. Um, the Neon database is connected and built directly through Vercel. So when I kind of built the architecture, I tried to build it in a way that it was really easy for me to go from prototype to like the company owns this, and it's not falling under anything that's personally owned by me. But yes, essentially, Float exists. This connects to Float, pulls that data in. It exists within that Neon database. I have auth built in underneath it. It's just username and password auth right now, but I don't see a world where that's going to live very long, and I see a world where we're going to end up going to strengthening that auth to fall under our Azure single sign-on that we're using everywhere else.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. It was a great presentation. I appreciate
Yeah,
your time.
thank you.
Bruce, I do have a question. Have you shown this to the other developers on the team? Like, and what are their thoughts?
I have shown it to a handful of developers on the team. I am a very technical project manager, so while
Yeah.
I'm not a developer, I have pretty good chops. I will say that I'm not a developer. Like I cannot handwrite code, even with a little bit of help. The overwhelming response from the devs I've showed it to has been, "This is pretty amazing what you can accomplish with no actual development skill." Um, One of our architects is the guy that kind of convinced me to do this, um, and he's kind of blown away on what we're able to do. But this isn't enterprise level tooling like that we should be selling off
Yeah.
uh, to other customers, and we know that. This is very custom bespoke tooling to us.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions in the room?
Oh, yeah, sorry, me again. So did you use like an agents.md file to kind of augment and over time tell it how to, to create documentation, all that? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I did use that a little bit on the documentation side to essentially say that, hey, when I say documentation, I mean all of this. So update this file, and this file. Other than that, I will say that when I started this project, I didn't know a ton about like the Claude MD idea or the Cursor MD idea. I didn't understand that very well. So my initial setup of those things was very poor. And if I had it to do again, I would start by building that better. Um, but I didn't really know anything about it at that point.
Got it. Thank you.